I never thought owning a small piece of property in a suburban HOA-controlled paradise would come with so many headaches, or teach me how satisfying a little rebellion could feel. It all started on a scorching summer weekend. The heat was oppressive, the sun beating down on the perfectly manicured lawns of Maplewood Estates. I, on the other hand, was blissfully isolated in my backyard, enjoying the hum of my brand new generator. It wasn't just a machine, it was a lifeline. Air conditioning, freezer, Wi-Fi, lights, my personal oasis during unexpected blackouts. And apparently, according to the HOA, it was also public property. I first realized something was off when Karen, yes, the same legendary HOA Karen from the neighborhood gossip mill, showed up at my gate. She was the picture of passive-aggressive determination, clipboard in hand, sunglasses reflecting the afternoon sun, and a smile that screamed, "I'm about to ruin your day." "Hello, Mr. Carter," she said, her voice overly sweet. "I'm here on behalf of the HOA. There's been a small emergency at the clubhouse. They lost power, and we were wondering if you could share your generator with us." I blinked. "Excuse me." She leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "We're short on backup power, and, well, you have a perfectly functioning generator. Surely a generous neighbor, like you could help us out." I paused, letting the words sink in. This was one of those moments where reality feels surreal. The HOA demanding that I give them my personal generator, the one I had bought with my hard-earned money, because apparently their $50,000 clubhouse wasn't properly equipped for a power outage. "Let me get this straight," I said carefully. "You want me to hand over my generator for free because your building doesn't work?" Karen's smile didn't falter. "Exactly."
Ist sehr her.
Then, slowly, a grin spread across my face. "Oh, I can do that," I said. "But only on my terms." From that moment, the plan began to form. Karen had underestimated me again. She clearly believed that HOA authority was a kind of magic wand, capable of bending reality to their will. I was about to demonstrate that generators, like respect, cannot be demanded, they can only be shared or withheld strategically. I spent the next few days preparing. I mapped the electrical grid to the clubhouse, ran tests, and familiarized myself with the circuit breakers. Meanwhile, Karen's visits became more frequent, each one dripping with faux politeness. "Any chance we could borrow the generator today?" she'd ask, peering at me like a hawk.
Ide not sympathetically.
"Oh, I'm not sure. It might be unavailable." And indeed, it would be. Neighbors soon caught wind of attention. A few of them would stop by my yard, pretending to water their lawns but really watching me like spectators in some absurd reality show. Mr. Peterson, the retired teacher who lived 3 doors down, leaned over his fence one morning and whispered, "You're going to do it, aren't you?" I smiled innocently. "Do what?" "Cut them off. Make them panic." It was perfect. By the time the next blackout hit, the HOA was completely dependent on me. And I was ready. It was a sweltering Thursday afternoon when it happened. The sun hung low in the sky, making the perfectly paved streets of Maplewood Estates glisten like molten gold. The clubhouse, a pristine little building the HOA loved to flaunt during community events, suddenly went dark. Lights flickered. The air conditioning gave a pathetic wheeze and died. Computers shut down mid-spreadsheet. Karen's carefully brewed iced tea in the lounge melted into a sad puddle. Perfect timing. I had been watching from my backyard, strategically sipping iced coffee and keeping Rusty close. The generator hummed softly nearby, its power cord snaking toward my little cabin like a lifeline. Today, it wasn't just powering my house, it was my secret weapon. Almost immediately, Karen called. "Mr. Carter," she barked into the phone. We have a serious situation here. Can we?" I held up my hand to Rusty, who tilted his head. "Timing is everything." "Oh, Karen," I said sweetly, my tone dripping with innocence. "I'm afraid the generator is unavailable right now. I'm using it." Her voice went from clipped to frantic. "You can't just, we need it. It's the clubhouse. The community." I chuckled. "The community is safe, Karen. Just trust me." Across the street, neighbors started noticing something was off. Cars slowed as HOA board members dashed frantically around the clubhouse, trying to find any way to restore power. Karen was pacing back and forth, clutching her clipboard like it was a lifeline, while several volunteers ran cords in absurd, tangled knots, none of them actually connected to a power source. I couldn't resist. I grabbed my phone and opened a live stream to show a few friends. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, gesturing toward the generator with Rusty at my side, "observe the HOA's finest moment. Chaos without electricity." The live stream chat exploded. Emojis of lightning bolts, fire, and laughing faces filled the screen. Some neighbors started peeking over fences, whispering, "Are they actually panicking?" Yes, they were inside the clubhouse. The scene was almost cinematic. Karen had abandoned all pretense of calm professionalism. She was now yelling instructions that nobody could follow. "Check the breaker. The breaker. Where's the breaker?" she screamed. One hapless volunteer ran in circles, holding a flashlight over a dead outlet, muttering, "I don't understand. Nothing works." Meanwhile, I reclined in my lawn chair, savoring every second of their panic. Rusty barked approvingly, as if saying, "This is why humans are entertaining." The HOA tried to negotiate over the phone. Multiple calls, increasingly desperate, all ended the same way. Me, calm and collected, insisting the generator was in use for maintenance and safety purposes. By mid-afternoon, Karen was in full meltdown mode. Her sunglasses had slid down her nose, her hair was slightly askew, and her clipboard bore a small coffee stain from frustration-induced spillage. The volunteers looked defeated. One muttered, "Maybe he's not giving it to us." And that's when I dropped the subtle bomb. "You know," I said over the phone, "I might be able to help if you promise to follow my instructions exactly. Otherwise, we'll just wait for the power to return naturally." Silence. "Follow your instructions," Karen repeated, voice trembling. We don't have a choice."
Exactly. They didn't.
I spent the next hour orchestrating a dramatic negotiation. Every demand from Karen became an opportunity to add suspense. First, she had to apologize for assuming she could dictate access. Then, she had to promise never to demand the generator again. She had to schedule a community coffee meeting at my yard on my terms to discuss boundaries. By the time the generator finally powered the clubhouse, the entire HOA looked shell-shocked. Volunteers slumped in chairs. Karen fumed silently, scribbling notes furiously. Meanwhile, I went inside, poured myself a celebratory iced tea, and patted Rusty on the head. Victory had never tasted sweeter. Neighbor reactions added a hilarious bonus. Mr. Peterson, watching from his porch, waved and shouted, "That's what I call a power move." A few other residents, now fully aware of Karen's obsession, nodded in quiet admiration. The clubhouse had survived without electricity for hours, and Karen had learned, at least for a moment, that control has limits. By nightfall, word had spread across the neighborhood. The HOA had panicked, and one private generator had humiliated them all. The story would be retold at potlucks and garden parties for years to come. The day after the blackout, the neighborhood was buzzing with gossip. Even the most indifferent residents were talking about the generator incident. By mid-morning, I had already received several texts from neighbors, some congratulatory, others cautious. "Did you see Karen yesterday? Classic meltdown. Careful, she might be planning something. You're a legend, Mr. Carter."
Truly.
I smiled at each one. Rusty wagged his tail as if he too understood that power, when wielded correctly, was a form of entertainment. Karen, however, did not take the humiliation lightly. By noon, she was knocking on my gate, clipboard in hand, hair still slightly disheveled from the blackout panic. She tried to compose herself, but her fury was palpable. "Mr. Carter," she began, voice rigid, "your actions yesterday were highly inappropriate. The HOA requires access to essential utilities during emergencies. You cannot simply withhold power." I leaned against the fence casually. "Karen, I did provide power, eventually. But the point is, control cannot be demanded. It can only be earned."
You forgot that.
She glared at me. "You have no right to treat the community this way." This is a serious matter, and I will be filing a formal complaint. I suppressed a grin. Of course. I look forward to reading it. I always enjoy paperwork. The neighbors had already taken notice. Mr. Peterson, ever the mischievous old co-conspirator, appeared at my side. She's pacing again, he muttered, like a cat plotting revenge. You might want to watch the mail. I did just that. Within hours, I received a thick envelope from the HOA, a request for an emergency compliance meeting to discuss my generator usage. I added each letter to the Karen Chronicles, a growing binder of absurdity and bureaucratic overreach. Rusty sat nearby, occasionally pawing at the stack as if to say, "This is hilarious." Karen escalated her efforts in other ways. The following weekend, she organized a generator contingency drill at the Clubhouse, inviting every HOA volunteer to participate. The irony was that the drill consisted of pretending to set up backup power while secretly hoping I'd surrender my generator voluntarily. I attended in spirit. I stayed home, watched from my backyard, and live-streamed the entire event to a few neighbors who had gathered across the street. It was a spectacle. Volunteers tangled cords, fumbled with extension cords, and debated who should flip which switch. Karen ran from person to person, clipboard clutched like a shield, barking instructions no one could follow. Meanwhile, my generator sat quietly in the shade, humming softly, a silent reminder that true power was mine. Neighbors began picking sides. Some, emboldened by the spectacle, approached me for strategy tips. Others, clearly intimidated by Karen's obsession, urged caution. The Smith family warned me to not provoke her further. The Joneses, still new to the neighborhood, confessed they were secretly rooting for me. The community had become a chessboard, and Karen had just realized she was playing against someone willing to think several moves ahead. The final straw came one evening when Karen attempted a direct confrontation at my gate. She had brought a small entourage, clipboard in hand, prepared to lecture me on civic duty. I opened the gate, feigned a polite smile, and said, "Karen, I hear you've been very busy lately. How about we settle this over lemonade in my yard?" She blinked. What? I gestured toward a small table, Rusty lying nearby, the generator humming quietly in the background. It's simple.
Seat. Drink.
Discuss boundaries. Or continue your chaos and enjoy more blackout rehearsals. Your choice. For once, she hesitated. I could see the gears turning. The neighborhood watched silently as she considered the offer, realizing perhaps she could not force compliance with sheer authority. It started with a knock, 3 sharp raps at my gate, the kind that immediately signals urgency and self-importance. I opened the door to find Karen standing there, her sunglasses slightly crooked, hair in a subtle storm of frustration, and a small army of HOA volunteers behind her. "Mr. Carter," she began, voice quivering with barely contained fury, "your actions have caused a community crisis. You need to return the generator immediately." I leaned casually against the fence, Rusty at my side. "Karen, you misunderstand. The generator isn't mine to return, it's mine to operate. You may, however, observe its performance from the safety of your clubhouse." Her eyebrows shot up. "Observe. That's educational," I interrupted. "Think of it as a learning experience, how not to manage a power outage." She sputtered, clearly weighing whether to explode or cry. I knew that look well. It's the one people get when they realize their control is imaginary. Karen's first attempt at retaliation was creative, if misguided. Over the next week, signage warfare. Every HOA notice suddenly had bold, dramatic language, demanding immediate generator compliance. I read them with a cup of tea in hand, smiling at phrases like, "Failure to provide essential utilities may result in catastrophic consequences." Neighborhood pressure. Volunteers wandered over, attempting to guilt me. "You're really making things hard for the community," they said. I'd nod solemnly, offering sage advice about the importance of personal property rights. Rusty barked at them once for dramatic effect. Ridiculous inspections. Karen attempted to inspect the generator for community compliance. She arrived in a full safety vest, clipboard, and a flashlight, as if she were a firefighter evaluating a nuclear plant. I politely offered a tour. After all, I was operating the generator, but she refused to touch it. Her volunteers took notes on the size, noise, and mood of generator, whatever that meant. Meanwhile, the neighborhood was hooked. Word spread quickly. The legendary generator feud had become Maplewood Estates' favorite drama. Parents whispered it to children, couples exchanged excited glances, and the retirees formed small betting pools on Karen's next move. I even began receiving texts from neighbors offering intel on Karen's plans. Some were hilarious. "She's planning a blackout drill next Thursday. She thinks you'll surrender voluntarily. I saw her measuring the distance from your gate to the generator for strategic reasons." I chuckled. Clearly, my little rebellion had become a full-blown spectacle. Karen's next attempt at revenge was bold and ridiculous. She staged what she called an emergency preparedness parade at the clubhouse. Volunteers dressed in reflective vests, carrying flashlights and extension cords, marched in formation. Karen gave dramatic speeches about civic duty and power sharing, all while I watched from my porch, iced tea in hand, Rusty lying on the lawn like a general surveying the battlefield. At one point, she motioned to a volunteer, whispering, "We must approach Mr. Carter diplomatically." I was ready. I stepped out onto my porch, waved casually, and said, "Hello, Karen. Lovely parade. Would you like a guided tour of my generator while you're here?" Her eyes widened. The volunteers stammered. A few backed away.
And Karen.
She turned red, muttering something about next time as they retreated. By now, I had fully embraced my role as the neighborhood's generator guardian. I documented everything: photos, videos, logs of interactions, even a small chart of Karen's escalating desperation. Rusty, ever loyal, occasionally pawed at the clipboard as if to say, "Don't forget the humor." The HOA began threatening legal action, claiming denial of essential services and community endangerment. I responded calmly through my attorney, pointing out that my generator was private property, located entirely on my land, and that they had no legal authority to compel access. Karen, of course, ignored the legal boundaries in practice, but everyone in the neighborhood could see who was really in charge. The generator hummed quietly in the background, a gentle reminder that true power belongs to the one who owns it. Karen had escalated, but her plans were increasingly ridiculous and ineffective. The neighborhood was fully aware of the generator feud, with some cheering me on openly. I had established psychological dominance, making Karen obsess over control while I stayed relaxed and in command. Rusty had become a local hero as well, the silent enforcer and mascot of my generator reign.